Welcome to the Fox 43 Free Agent Frenzy. I'm digital content manager Kelly Heron, and I'm joined by producer extraordinaire, weather presenter, everything, Jacob Hitz. Welcome today, Jacob. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's good to be here.
The MLB offseason is kicking off. This is about the time where teams are getting ready to make their free agent signings. Winter meetings just around the corner here in the beginning of December. And every year, MLB Trade Rumors, a website, a self-described clearinghouse of MLB content, does a contest where they predict the top 50 free agents. Have you ever heard of the contest before, Jacob?
I have not. It makes sense that they do this. They do it for just about everything, right? Every sport, every free agency, trade deadlines and everything. So it makes sense, but I haven't heard of this before. No.
So let me just tell you and the viewers a little bit about it as well. So every year they put out a list of the top 50 free agents. They rank them, and then they go through, decide with their team of experts, hey, how many years do we think this player is going to sign for? What will the potential contract look like in terms of money? And then what team are they going to land with? So, hey, we're going to run through the same thing where this is going to be our Fox 43 Sports entry into the MLB Trade Rumors Top 50 Free Agent Prediction Contest here in 2024. Now, this year's crop of free agents, it's a little bit different than last year and maybe even the year before in terms of depth. But, man, at the top you have a star, potential Hall of Famer, in Juan Soto, an outfielder who last couple years obviously has bounced between a few different teams, San Diego, now with the Yankees, but had a great free agent walk year and obviously helped lead them to the World Series. Unfortunately for them, I think he's making it across town, and I think it's the big pockets of Steve Cohen and the New York Mets that bring in Juan Soto to the fold. Obviously, pairing him with Francisco Lindor, I feel like is a great option for them. And then ultimately, I think the goal on Soto's mind is breaking the average annual value record that has been set technically by Shohei Ohtani, and while his $700 million is deferred, Soto wants that $700 million guaranteed up front, and I believe Steve Cohen is going to go there for him.
We both agree that he's going to New York. I have him staying, though, in the Bronx. I think he's going to stay with the Yankees, and I think the World Series really put everything into perspective for the Yankees and their fans, that he was the most important piece of that World Series team. You have Aaron Judge, you have some good pitchers, but man, he out-hit everybody on the team in the World Series, and I don't think you're going to get back to that point if you don't re-sign Juan Soto. I like the pick. He's going to get a record amount of money, and we know the Yankees aren't afraid to splurge. They've done it before. I think they do it again here, and Juan Soto stays exactly where he's at and keeps wearing the pinstripes for a long time.
I'm with you. If he's not with the Mets, he's definitely with the Yankees, is my gut feel for sure, and I'm with you exactly. They're not making it back to the World Series without Juan Soto in that lineup. Just looks totally different. The number 2 option on the board is actually the top pitcher that's on the market this year in Corbin Burnes. Obviously a trade acquisition by the Baltimore Orioles from the Brewers last year. He was the Baltimore Orioles ace last year, and he proved again, to be one of the most consistent pitchers in baseball, and I expect he's going to go out and get a pretty tremendous contract out there. There's a lot of teams that are going to be vying for him. It really just kind of depends, I think, who's going to go maybe that extra year, that extra, 20 mil or so that might send it over the top. For me, who's really desperate for that arm is the Boston Red Sox. I mean, when is the last time you could say that the Red Sox had an ace at the top of the rotation? Maybe Chris Sale during his healthy times when they won the World Series. But I mean, they really need an ace to kind of solidify the top of that rotation, and I think they have the money available at this point. They're really only heavily committed to Rafael Devers at this point, so I think they go 7 years, $200 million to bring in Corbin Burnes, top of that rotation, steal from a division rival.
And this is where I lean on the Mets. I think the Mets are going to cash in and take Corbin Burnes here, and his strikeout numbers dropped a little bit last year, but we talked about he's the best pitcher available. The Mets have plenty of pitchers that are going up, more free agency this year. And look, they know I don't want to say dynasty, but the great pitchers that Philly has and the good pitching that Atlanta still has. We'll talk about Max Fried in a minute, but the Mets need to get another arm to stay in contention with the Braves, with the Phillies, to try and win the NL East and make another deep push toward the World Series, and that's why I think they have to take Corbin Burnes here and shell out the money. You're not going to be able to re-sign all of those pitchers that are up for grabs. Probably going to get one out of those 2 that are up. I think Corbin Burnes is your guy here. You have to make him a priority.
And the Mets president of baseball of operations, David Stearns, obviously has some familiarity with Corbin Burns coming from Milwaukee, so I can totally see that fit in there as well. The one interesting thing about this exercise, man, hey, one player signs one different place, one pitcher's going here, one pitcher's going there. It all of a sudden might change the whole dynamic of where the whole offseason goes. So that's the fun part of this right here. One thing that I do think is interesting is, hey, we always talk about these top players leaving their teams, but I think sometimes we're always forgetting about, sometimes guys want to stay where they're comfortable. Guys might want to stay where they've had success. And for me, number 3 on the list, Alex Bregman, third baseman. There's a lot of talk right now about him moving even potentially to the Phillies. I just kind of think he has that home there in Houston, and I think the Astros aren't done giving up on their window of contention yet. I don't think they're ready to wave the white towel. I think that they think that their vets can give it at least a couple more runs, and I think they end up trying to keep Bregman, make him a career Astro there with Jose Altuve.
I was not considering Alex Bregman for this team until yesterday, when the rumor came out that the Phillies may trade Alec Bohm. He just had a great year, first-time All-Star, but his attitude might be a problem. That changed my whole song and dance. Bregman's going to Philly. They're going to trade out Alec Bohm, and, of course, they're going to want somebody younger. Bregman isn't necessarily getting any younger right now, but I still think his skills at the plate are going to be too much for the Phillies to kind of ignore him. They have to get him here. They get more power. They get good defense over in the hot corner, which is something that I know Bohm has been hot and cold with in the past. I like Bregman to the Phillies as long as they trade Alec Bohm. They're not going to go outright and sign him, but if they know that, hey, Bohm's going to be a piece and we're going to trade away, Bregman's coming in.
I can totally see it. I mean, he's a proven winner,
Yep.
And that's something that the Phillies are looking to definitely add to the middle of that order. Number 4 on the list, free agent last year, kind of one of those guys with Scott Boras that signed a little bit later and then ended up struggling a little bit this year, was Blake Snell. I think this year, he's going to try to sign pretty early, and he's going to land with a team that has probably had interest in him for some time. He's one of those analytical darling pitchers, where people are divided on how good Blake Snell really is. He actually won the Cy Young even just a couple years ago. So I do think, the Los Angeles Dodgers, man, there's room out there for them to also sign Roki Sasaki, the top Japanese international free agent. Reason he's not on this list is, that technically is a little bit different international free agency, but I believe they're going to land him and then also add a Blake Snell. They had a ton of injuries in the starting rotation this year. Obviously, they have an aging Clayton Kershaw. They're going to have Dustin May coming back from injury. But Gavin Stone's out all year. Bobby Miller was up and down all season. So the Dodgers in the World Series were down to about 3 starting pitchers and then bullpen gaming. And even Dave Roberts said he did not want to go back to Los Angeles. And right here, you can add another top-end starting pitcher in Blake Snell. It's going to cost you some money, but obviously GM, President of Baseball Operations, Andrew Friedman, has familiarity with him from his time in Tampa, so I think everything kind of lines up there. Him, Tyler Glasnow, Roki Sasaki, Yamamoto. That's a heck of a rotation. I mean, I don't see why the Dodgers aren't trying to make that move.
Of course, the Dodgers, they're just going to keep trying to grow the dynasty, right? No matter how much people want it to just fade away, they're just going to keep spending money, and it feels like printing money to keep these players. I like Snell staying in California, like you, but I have him going to San Diego and joining the Padres this year. And the reason I like him staying there is, man, they could use another starter. Beef up that starting rotation a little bit, and he's the guy. He's been really, really sharp over these last couple of years, and he's been shaky at points to start out a year. But, man, if he can shake that off, once he gets into the summer and he gets into his full stride, he is so hard to hit against. And for a team like the Padres, that they have a lot of free agents this year, especially offensively, it's a bit of a risk to go with a pitcher because you're going to have to spend a lot of money. He's going to want that big deal, but I think he gets the bag here and he goes to San Diego.
And obviously familiarity there, pitching there before, winning the Cy Young. I feel as if, that's not a terrible fit. They're going to have to add some arms. So, for sure, I think that's a fit for Blake Snell. Number 5 on our list is the first one I believe that we agree with so far, if my notes were correct there. Willie Adames, shortstop from the Milwaukee Brewers, free agent. I don't believe he's going to be staying there. He's going to cost a pretty penny on the free agent market. But there is a team that needs to add a shortstop and has needed one since Brandon Crawford left a few years ago, and that is the San Francisco Giants. They need a bat in the middle of their order. It just feels like the perfect fit. You might have to pay a little bit extra than, maybe the market projection might be, but I think 6 years, 160-ish might get it done to bring Adames into the fold.
His defense fell off a little bit last year, but he set a new high for RBIs. He has the speed where he's able to pick off bases when he's out on the base path. I think we're both spot on here, and if Adames doesn't go to San Francisco, I think a lot of people will be surprised, and I'd be really curious to see who else is going to land him here, because I think San Francisco is the obvious choice for both sides here.
Absolutely. And sometimes when there is that obvious fit or whatever, it just kind of, blends right together for everybody. Number 6 on the list is top left-handed arm, Max Fried from the Atlanta Braves. And the Braves have been pretty famous over the past few years for signing up their young guys and keeping them on long-term extensions. And the exception of this has been Fried. And I think there's a reason for that. He's going to cost a pretty penny. And he has a lot of miles on that arm. And he's been successful now. He has had some injury struggles. He hasn't missed, I wouldn't say, like an overly crazy amount of time where you don't want to commit a long-term deal to him. But I think, a team like the Chicago Cubs is desperate for an ace, kind of like the Red Sox are at the top of that rotation. And I think, a player like Fried, he might want, that familiarity with the new team that he's going to. And Dansby Swanson, former Atlanta Brave, also made that move to the Chicago Cubs a couple years ago. Hey, maybe that helps him, sign the dotted line with the Chicago Cubs.
Well, and you think about the luxury tax, too. That's really going to hurt the Braves if they try and keep somebody like Max Fried. You've got more people coming up down the line that you're going to have to re-sign. I think we both agree that he's going to Chicago, that he's going to go to the Cubs. And I think that luxury tax is part of the reason why he's going to ask for too much money. And the Braves are going to be like, well, our hands are tied here. We can't do much for you. And I think he's going to go out. And the Cubs aren't going to be afraid to spend some of that money. They've been trying these last couple of years to get out of this habit of not being able to make the playoffs. They get close, then they fall apart at the end of the year. I think this is the year where they really try to dig deep, sign some of these guys, and make a playoff push.
And get that veteran stabilizing presence at the top of that rotation. A playoff hero for the New York Mets was Pete Alonso, the polar bear, their captain, essentially. I don't see him leaving. I really can't picture him in another uniform. I think once he hit that home run in Milwaukee to really help them, kind of get in their playoff push, it might have kind of changed the dynamic with him. He has potential to be their franchise's all-time home run leader. So I think, I have them signing Soto. I think, putting a nice order of Lindor, Soto, Alonso is a nice top of the order there to compete with the Los Angeles Dodgers there with Ohtani, Betts, and Friedman. I mean, that's where baseball's going today. If you want to compete with the Dodgers, that's what we're going to have to put out there, and I think that's where the Mets are going to aim to do.
How much money do the Mets have, and how much do they want to spend? I think that's the big question for the front office. I don't think he's staying. I know there's some talk that, well, maybe he'll go to the Nationals. Maybe he'll go to another NL East team. I have him going to the AL. He's going to the Tigers. And I know you talk about this with another first baseman free agent that we'll talk about in a bit. It's Spencer Torkelson. Experiment over. You can trade him away, try and get some pieces there, and that opens up the window to bring in Pete Alonso. He may not have a ton of defensive ability, being a bigger guy at first base, but I think the bat takes care of itself. And you look at the Tigers roster from last year, not a ton of star power on it, and they made the playoffs and were a contender against the Guardians, which I don't think anybody expected midway through the year. So the Tigers, if they can keep some of those pieces and bring in a star or two, kind of like Pete Alonso, I think the obvious call is go to Detroit.
No, and that's a fit. They need a power bat in the middle of that order. I think Alonso would be a great fit there for sure. Number 8 in our order is Jack Flaherty. Maybe one of the best walk years out of any free agent. He was kind of coming off a rough season where he had struggled really down the stretch with the Baltimore Orioles, and he came back and he had a great season with the Tigers, and then getting traded over to the Los Angeles Dodgers, obviously helping pitch them to a World Series crown. I believe he's a Southern California guy. might want to stay in the area, but I'm going to say the Dodgers are going to spend elsewhere, and the Los Angeles Angels, my gosh, they're another team that needs some help in the rotation. They have just gone through the arms over the years, and I think that, again, another one that you might have to overpay a little bit to bring in, especially to the Angel situation where things are a little bit murky right now, but I think they do that at like $125 for Jack Flaherty, bring him in there to be the ace of your staff.
I think Flaherty's going to have an issue finding a long-term big deal just because of the injuries that he's had over the last couple of years. I have him staying in LA. He's going to stay a Dodger, and he had a pretty solid year last year, all things considered. I think it's going to be a smaller deal, not necessarily a prove it like you get $1 million or 1 year for a couple $1,000,000, and then we'll see how you do, and then we'll reassess at the end of the year. I think he's going to stay for maybe 2-3 years. But after what he was able to do for them come playoff time, toward the end of the season, I think Flaherty stays right there in Los Angeles with the Dodgers.
Well, staying out west, there's a team that really needs power bats out there, and that is the Seattle Mariners. And the deal with them is, hey, they're not going to spend at the very top of the market. They're never going to be that team that's going to break the bank. So I think they're going to play a little bit more down towards this middle tier here. And Anthony Santander, I feel like, might be a perfect fit for them. He's not somebody who's going to cost $150 million to bring in. I think they're actually probably going to be able to bring him in on a 4-year, $80 million deal, not even have to go to 100. And he could be a really nice switch-hitting power bat in the middle of that order, somebody to protect Julio Rodriguez that they haven't really had, somebody to add some pop. And it's one of their necessary adds this offseason.
And I think I do like the Mariners pick, but I also think the Guardians could use somebody else in the outfield, somebody with a little more power. They couldn't really get over the hump with the Yankees there in the ALCS. So Santander, if he's going to go somewhere, it could be Seattle, it could be Cleveland. They're probably not going to try and spend a ton for him, but if they think they're going to get a good deal out of it, keep him around for a couple of years, I think his stats show that he's definitely worth it. So Santander flies out of Baltimore, and he's heading on his way to Cleveland.
So the next left-handed pitcher on our list here, man, eliminated the Phillies with the crossfire, and he learned that down the stretch there, made a mechanical adjustment with the New York Mets, and Sean Manaea went off and was pitching like a top of the order, top of the rotation pitcher for pretty much his last 10, 11 starts of the season. I think his last start of the year, obviously against the Dodgers, didn't go his way, but I think that mechanical change and that comfortability with the Mets is going to lead to a re-signing there. So you had them going with Corbin Burns in the starting rotation. I think they're going to go the Soto route and then try to retain a guy like Manaea at a cheaper value, maybe like a 3-year, $60 million. I think they were probably pleased with the performance they got down the stretch, and are going to hope that continues moving forward.
Well, and in terms of baseball years, he's getting up there in age a little bit, so he doesn't have a lot of lifespan left in Major League Baseball. I think he finishes his career in New York with the Mets with this deal. I think this will get him a couple of years and get him to the finish line. He did really, really well, like you mentioned, and was a nightmare for Phillies batters come playoff time. He stays right where he's at, and this is the pitcher I think that they keep. A couple up for free agency. I think Manaea is the one that they try to hold on to and not let go anywhere else.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's a strong number of left-handed bats in the NL East that the Mets are going to want to be prepared for. Teoscar Hernandez, another guy that I think stays put on this list. A right-handed power bat, had a ton of success with the Los Angeles Dodgers, came to them on a deal where it was in a way a prove-it deal. He wanted to secure a little bit of a longer-term deal going into free agency this offseason. So I think he does that with the Dodgers. I think they were totally pleased, and without a ready-made replacement from their minor league system that isn't totally apparent right now, I think the Dodgers are going to keep one of their postseason heroes.
And you might as well, right? I mean, just in case you talked about injuries with starting pitchers for the Dodgers toward the end of the year. You want to keep him around, right? You kind of sort of put him on a prove-it deal for this year. He did that and much more. I think he blew them out of the water with what they expected based off of what they got. And we both agree, Hernandez staying right there in L.A., trying to run it back and get another ring.
Left-handed arms are aplenty here in this free agent class, and Yusei Kikuchi, man, is another one of those analytical darlings. It's just teams are real split on his performance. The ERA might be real high, but so are the strikeouts, and the whip is low, and people are interested in adding him. And he was another trade deadline acquisition last year, and I think he goes out this offseason and is able to secure probably a decent little long-term deal, maybe like 3 years, $60 million for him as well. I think the New York Yankees are going to go out there and add him. They were another team that saw, we needed to add a little bit more depth in the starting rotation, dealt with injuries down the stretch. An injury, obviously, to Garrett Cole to begin the year. So I think someone like Kikuchi, he's not going to cost, over $100 million to bring in. So I think that might make him a little bit more of a fit for the Yankees.
I have him going to another AL team. Back to the Tigers. Big on the Tigers this year. I think the Tigers had that taste of the playoffs, and now they know, okay, well, this is what we have to do. We're going to have to spend a little money, but we're going to make money in the end if we're able to go pretty far. I like Kikuchi going to the Tigers. It adds another arm to that rotation. They had a pretty good rotation last year, all things considered. You got Skubal, who far and away one of the best pitchers in the entire league last year. I think Kikuchi goes in there and helps keep that rotation moving right along and moving through batters.
It'll help them avoid the bullpen games that they had to rely on down the stretch for sure. Sticking with the Tigers, you had them adding Pete Alonso, and you referenced my pick, and my pick is Christian Walker. So going a little bit of the cheaper route, obviously, but still consistent. Still a consistent bat, Gold Glove winning first baseman. Somebody that I think, like you had said, the Spencer Torkelson experiment has not worked. Unfortunately for them, the former first overall pick, it's time to move on, and I think Christian Walker just really would help solidify the middle of that order and take the Tigers to a new level this season.
I think of the play in the World Series where Anthony Rizzo and Garrett Cole both look at each other and say, no, you got it. And nobody got it, and that allowed the Dodgers to tie it, take the lead, win the series. He's going to the Yankees. The Yankees need somebody at first base, not only that can hit, Anthony Rizzo falling apart, but somebody that can field. He's that guy. He's bringing a couple of Gold Gloves with him. He's won, 3 in a row now in Arizona at first base. I feel like Walker should be a big priority for the Yankees. That, you're going to have to spend a lot of money to keep Juan Soto that we talked about, but I think for Walker, you're going to have to spend quite a bit too, because there are plenty of people that are going to want an athletic first baseman that can also hit really well. But I have him going to New York, putting on the pinstripes, going to the Bronx.
That's the most popular destination I've seen for him so far this offseason. Another left-handed arm, but the top left-handed reliever on the market is Tanner Scott. And this was another trade deadline acquisition from the Marlins to the San Diego Padres. And, man, he lit it up, and it was exactly what the Padres needed down the stretch. But out here on the open market, it's going to cost a pretty penny to sign him. I don't think he's going to stay in San Diego. But how about my New York Mets? Just keep spending the money. Obviously not a Mets fan, but these guys, I think are going to break the bank this offseason. And in the same vein as Sean Manaea, hey, there's a lot of left-handed hitters that you're going to have to contend with this National League East. Why not bring one of the top left-handed relievers into your bullpen and then pair him with Edwin Diaz at the back end? This is a team that it's already scaring me. I believe Tanner Scott is on his way to become a Met.
All these guys are going to the Mets, and then come May, you'll say, darn it, why did I want him to go to the Mets?
Right.
I have him going to the Rangers. Let's be honest. After the World Series run, the bullpen was not good for the Rangers last year. It really struggled. It wasn't the only reason that they didn't make the playoffs, but it certainly didn't help. You've got one of the better relievers available, and I think the Rangers have to take advantage of it and bring him in and try and stop the bleeding, if you will, and turn this whole ship around. They weren't afraid to spend money these last couple of years to really build up a World Series team, and they have a lot of pieces from that team still there now. I think Tanner Scott is putting on a Rangers jersey this winter, and he'll be ready to go come spring training.
Absolutely would help solidify that bullpen. Luis Severino is a guy who bounced back with the Mets on a one-year prove-it deal last year. Had one of the better seasons he's had in quite a few years. He's just been a guy who's dealt with injuries over the last few years. So, again, I think the market's a little limited. He's not going to be able to secure, that 5-6 year deal, but maybe a 3-year deal, $45 million, somewhere in there. And a team I think that would fit for that is the San Diego Padres. They're going to have to add some starting rotation depth. They dealt with injuries injuries last year, and they're already going to be down Joe Musgrove for the entire season. So I think it's a good fit there. And Luis Severino had some success in a bigger ballpark in Citi Field this year. So I think, obviously moving out to, oh my gosh, I forget what it's called out there in San Diego now, but moving out to the San Diego Stadium for them. It used to be Qualcomm, then I'm thinking Petco, but it's neither of them.
Yeah, right.
But out to San Diego's park, where it's a spacious outfield, that should be good for Luis Severino.
I have him going to the Angels, another wonky ballpark out there, right? And you talked about the injuries. It was a rebound year this past year with the Mets. It wasn't where he was in 2018, which was essentially his peak stat-wise, but moving in the positive direction. We already talked about how the Angels desperately need some arms in the rotation, try and turn things around out there in Anaheim. I have him going to the Angels, and I think it could be a good fit as long as he's able to keep that momentum going from the Mets that he had through the playoffs and bring that out to LA.
The Angels definitely need to add a arm in the rotation. We both have them, just different arms, obviously. Jurickson Profar, another guy from the Padres, and I have him sticking there. He's had his best years of his career as a Padre. He's really actually struggled in any other years outside of a Padres uniform. He had one little decent season with it coming up with the Rangers, but he's really something different with the Padres. I don't know what that mojo is, but they seem to like that arrangement. I think they come together on a 3-year deal, maybe $40 million. He actually had his first All-Star appearance last year, so hopefully that continues for him, and I think that's what San Diego is going to hope as well.
For teams, when you get to free agency, you have wants that, oh, that guy's really, really good, I want him on my team. And then you have the need, somebody that you already have, and yeah, we're going to need to bring him back. This is a need for the Padres. To shore up that infield, you're going to want to keep him, and I think he stays in San Diego, like we both said. I think this is going to be one of their top priorities. Yes, they're going to have to address some pitching things, but you have a lot of offense up for grabs. Right here, lock it down with Profar, keeping him where he's at.
Nathan Eovaldi is out on the free agent market after declining a player option with the Texas Rangers, and he's out there looking for a deal with a contender. It might not be that 4 or 5 year deal, but couple years, higher AAV sort of option, and he's looking for that team that's looking to win the World Series. And when I think of a team that's used to making those kind of veteran additions to the rotation, I think of the Atlanta Braves and how they worked with Charlie Morton the past 2 years, and I think Eovaldi might be their next kind of addition like that, and he kind of has a great couple years here with the Braves. So I think they replace Fried with a little bit of obviously a cheaper option, but still a proven guy, a guy who's won multiple World Series, and someone who is going to help them moving forward.
So I'm going to tip my cards a little bit. Phillies fan, I've been begging for since the 2024 season started. The Phillies have to pick up another starting pitcher in order to stay in it. You've got Andrew Painter. He's coming off Tommy John surgery. He's still not ready. I know he's finally back to pitching, but I don't think he's going to be ready by the time this season's done. If he is, I don't see him getting up to the big leagues. He might get up to AAA because he really didn't get up all that high before needing surgery. So he's out of the mix. You're not going to be able to rely on him this year, or at least most of this year. Taijuan Walker, bust. Did not work out. Thought maybe the second year would go better in Philly. It went worse, at least in the regular season, and once again, really didn't see any postseason. Spencer Turnbull, another free agent after this year, thought maybe he was the guy when he emergency came in to start, and then the injury bug bit him again, and he was out for the rest of the year. So they need somebody. Eovaldi might just be that guy. They don't need to go too flashy to pick up another pitcher. You have Wheeler, you have Nola, you have two aces. Chris Sanchez, he had a breakout year this year. Ranger Suarez started the year hot, then got hurt. He kind of slid down a little bit. If Ranger can pick it back up, they're really looking for a number 5, or maybe he becomes a number 4 and Ranger slides down to number 5. I think Eovaldi checks a lot of the boxes. You're not going to break the bank, but you're still going to get some quality, which is what the Phillies need coming out of this starting rotation, and then you just have to hope that they all stay healthy throughout the whole year. I think that's easier said than done.
Absolutely. The Phillies are an interesting team this offseason. There could be a number of trades, a number of different moves made as this team is trying to improve itself after struggling in the past couple years. But sticking with those Phillies, there's one guy I do think that they bring back, and that is Jeff Hoffman. There has been rumor lately that Hoffman's looking to go back to the starting rotation. I really don't know why he's looking to do that when he really struggled as a starting pitcher throughout his entire career, and it was not until he made his move to the bullpen just over a year and a half, a little over, that ago with the Phillies that he had the success, and he's had the best years of his career. So I do think, they come to an agreement, maybe like a 4-year, $45 million deal, keep one of their top closing options in Philadelphia. He might not be the closer, but I think he's that guy that you put out there in, what you think is the most important situation of the game. And then also I have them bringing in another arm down the line to boost them.
Well, essentially, Rob Thompson's method is everybody's the closer, right? It doesn't matter who you are, you could get thrown in that clutch situation at the end of the game. Hoffman was one of the better guys until you got to the playoffs. Then he kind of sort of fell apart. It was really weird to watch the Phillies bullpen go out there. They were so good in the regular season. Your stronger arms, Hoffman, you had Strom go out there and just couldn't find it and gave up runs, gave up hits, and didn't help the Phillies situation. Their offense had their own troubles, don't get me wrong, but the bullpen was definitely a concern when it wasn't for most of the year. We agree, though, he's staying in Philadelphia, and I think he's one of the keys to success. I think that combo of him and Strom, the righty and the lefty, I really like those two together, and, we'll see what Hoffman does, but he had a really good year in 23, and even better year in 24. I think he builds on that, and you might as well keep feeding him while he's hot, and as long as he's able to shake some of that rust off that he had maybe in the playoffs, through spring training, I think he'll be good to go and be another reliable pick for the Phillies.
Hopefully it's postseason experience and they get over the hump.
Yeah.
I mean, it's we'll put it in the past. One of the worst hitting outfields in all of Major League Baseball last year belonged to the playoff-bound Kansas City Royals. So they were able to pull that team along even despite their lack of production from the outfield. I think they look to change that in free agency this year. And Tyler O'Neill went to Boston last year, had a solid season in between some injury bug, but blasted 30-plus home runs and is should be a solid addition for one of their corner outfield spots. And I think the Royals will definitely look to bring him in.
I'm on a roll here with the Phillies, and I think he's staying with the Phillies. You look at their outfield, right? Nick Castellanos, great year. Walked off, 5-6 games in the middle of last year? Just an insane run. Was one of their best bats, if not the best bat, in the playoffs there against the Mets. And then you look at the rest. Austin Hayes, who they traded for from Baltimore. I know he was hurt a lot, but when he was up at the plate, it didn't really seem like he fit. Brandon Marsh has struggled to hit against lefties. Really struggled. They benched him for a while against left-handed pitchers and brought him up toward the end of the year when they were playing lefties, trying things out. He hit a little better, but I don't think he's quite where he needs to be. And Johan Rojas, he struggled to hit the baseball a lot last year. Great in the outfield, great defender, really good defender. He struggles to hit the baseball. That's a concern when you have some streaky teammates that when they're hot, and when they're cold, you don't want to watch at all. I think Tyler O'Neill, you get him in the outfield, somebody to, maybe take the place of Rojas and get him to really hone in on that offensive ability, somebody that you can swap in and out with Marsh, somebody that can handle lefties like Tyler O'Neill can. I think he's a good fit for Philadelphia, and, his defensive ability is pretty darn good too, which is something that I think Philly still needs to focus on. You don't want big guys like Kyle Schwarber lumbering around in the outfield like you did 2 years ago, right? You want somebody fast. So I like the pick of Tyler O'Neill coming to the city of brotherly love.
Gleyber Torres is one of the top risers, I think, on this list. Before this came out, he was definitely not anywhere near the top 20, and then the playoffs happened. And all of a sudden, he was the Yankees' leadoff hitter and helped them get to the World Series. So I think he parlays that into a little shorter-term deal, a little higher average annual value. But a team who had no starting second baseman going into next year was the Toronto Blue Jays. And they tried to roll with Davis Schneider. They had a few different guys roll through there. Otto Lopez. It didn't work. It didn't work. So I think going into this year, the Blue Jays aren't totally clear on the plan, right? They haven't re-signed Bo Bichette long-term. They haven't got Vladdy long-term. They really got to decide, what's the deal here? What are we doing? I think a mid-deal like this kind of fits a team who hasn't decided exactly yet what they're doing and probably wants to give it one more shot with Vlad and Bichette. So I think they bring in Gleyber Torres, maybe try to make a new top of their order there in Toronto.
Well, and he's a good bat to have. I agree. I think he's going to Toronto, and we'll see how things shake out. I think a change of scenery might be good for him. I know things didn't necessarily end the best there in New York toward the end of the playoffs, but I think if he can get out there working with some good hitters like Bichette, like Vladdy, he might be able to keep things going. And even if it's a shorter deal where it's only a 1 or 2 year deal, he can turn that into, when he gets to free agency again, all right, pay me, where am I going? Because he may not stay there for long, but I think he's going to have an impact.
Absolutely. Another former Yankee on the market is Clay Holmes. Actually had maybe his worst year in the past couple years last season, but over the past 3 seasons has been one of the most consistent relievers in baseball. And this is the reliever I had aforementioned. I believe the Phillies are going to look to bring in. Some ties to the Yankees, but our Rob Thompson obviously hasn't been there in a few years. I really just think it's more, hey, this guy has been consistent back-end arm. We could potentially use him in the back end of the rotation. I think there's a fit there in Philadelphia, and I think Clay Holmes ends up winning the Phillies.
I haven't gone to the Orioles, and they had a rough year with the bullpen. They started with Craig Kimbrell trying to close out games. Philly fans knew that wasn't going to work out well, and O's fans shortly found out that it wasn't going to work out all that well. He got put out on waivers, and he got released. It did not go well for the O's, and then they traded. They got Greg Soto, which, all things considered, I think he did well in Baltimore. They traded for Sir Anthony Dominguez. That did not go as well. And so I think the O's have more questions than answers as far as their bullpen is concerned. And who do we have to find to try and close out a game? Now, I know Holmes, you talked about it, had some issues trying to close things up in the Bronx, but I think he gets down to Baltimore and is able to turn things around and becomes that reliable guy that the O's desperately need coming out of the bullpen.
There's definitely a fit there for him in Baltimore. Another AL East team that I think needs a bullpen addition will be the Boston Red Sox. They're looking to move on from Kenley Jansen. He was solid for them, but it just seems as if there was like an oil and water situation going on there. He wants to win. The Red Sox did not do much winning while he was there. Carlos Estevez came over to the Phillies from the Los Angeles Angels last year after being their closer. It's essentially the Phillies closer in a way down the stretch, but I think really, Boston needs to add in a back-end arm. Maybe not a guy who's going to, come in at the top of the market, but someone like Estevez who could be a solid option, I think is a fit for them.
There's no way that the Phillies re-sign Jeff Hoffman and Estevez, right? I think they are. I really think that they are. If anything, I think he's the priority of the two, just because you had a smaller sample size with him last year, and I don't really think he disappointed going through last year. I thought he did really well once he came down to Philly, and I would like to see him hang around for a couple more years. I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he might be that next official closer for the Phillies moving forward. And would I be disappointed if they don't re-sign him? No, but I think between him and Hoffman, he's the better guy to re-sign, but they're going to keep both. Why not?
I think the grand slam that he gave up to Lindor has left, lasting impression on people that, they kind of forget all his additions, down the stretch and everything that he contributed to the team after they got him at the trade deadline. Matthew Boyd is a guy who's injured again, has dealt with injuries throughout his career, but finally came back with the Guardians almost midway through last year, made about 8-9 starts down the stretch, including a couple in the postseason to help this team. And I just think it's one of those, there's a fit. We helped you rehab from injury. You kind of came back this year. You're not going to cost a ton to break the bank, and the Guardians are going to need to add to that rotation. They were another team that saw injuries kind of decimate them, and they've always relied on their farm system. Well, when you're trying to compete in the playoffs, it's not always good to be plucking the rookies, and I think adding a left-handed arm like Matthew Boyd had experience in the AL Central his whole career is a decent choice for the Guardians.
And we agree. I have him staying in Cleveland as well, and you look at somebody like Shane Bieber, who's probably going to be on his way out and dealing with injury. I think, Boyd has dealt with injuries in the past, but keep things solid. He'll stay in Cleveland and stay in that starting rotation for quite a bit of time.
Jock Peterson's one of those tough bats to place. He's at this point basically a left-handed DH. He doesn't really even play the outfield anymore. So you have him against right-handed pitching, and that's essentially it at this point. Again, a tough guy to place.
I think the Minnesota Twins are going to be in the market for at least one bat because they got to do something. There's talks that they're going to look to move Carlos Correa. They are in the midst of an ownership change, so they may be looking to cut some payroll. But a guy like Peterson's not going to cost much or break the bank to bring in, so I think there is a fit. They have lost some left-handed bats over the past couple years, so add some depth there and an option for them off the bench.
We talked about Pete Alonso. I don't think Alonso's staying, so you need a bat. How about the Mets for Jock Peterson? I think it could work out. As you mentioned, he really only hits one type of pitcher. He's really only a DH. If you sign a solid first baseman, you don't necessarily have to worry about having him as an everyday batter, somebody you can have coming in up off the bench, ready to go. I like Jock Peterson going to the Mets, trying to add a little bit more power to that team and restore them back to eventually the LCS and try and make a push for the World Series.
I know this seems like a theme, but injuries really decimated the Orioles rotation the past season, and they were a team that was down to basically 2 or 3 options when it came down to postseason time. So I think adding a mid-tier arm is something they're going to look to do as well. So an Andrew Heaney type, a guy who did a little bit of everything over the past couple of years with the Rangers. He was in the bullpen and back to the rotation. Didn't primarily start for them, but had some success, had some of his best years in the major leagues with the Rangers, and I think he's going to parlay that into a short little deal here with the Orioles, add a left-handed arm to that rotation that I believe is all right-handed at this point.
I have him staying with the Rangers, and I know his record last year, 5-14, not great. Not saying it's all on him, not saying it's all on the offense for not being able to score any runs, but if he can get some more offensive help, that might be able to tweak that around a little bit, and I think he had some upside for Texas, and I know they both kind of want to come back together, so why not keep him in Texas?
Absolutely. So we had the Toronto Blue Jays making one infield addition. I have them making another, and this is Hyesung Kim coming over from Korea, a guy who has some experience playing second, some short, even some left field, but I do think the infield is primarily where they're looking, and also as a defensive option, and that's something that they need in the infield. And in the case that, hey, maybe they do move on from Bo Bichette, this is a guy who maybe could play some shortstop. And then also, obviously, if they hold on to Bo Bichette, maybe he's your super utility kind of guy. So I think there's a fit in Toronto. Obviously, they have some experience bringing in over international players, have some success helping acclimate them to the major leagues. I think that might also help appeal to Kim wanting to come to the Blue Jays.
I think what hurts him is the fact that he doesn't have a lot of power with him. He's a consistent bat. He's a great defender, but he doesn't necessarily have that power, and you don't really see a lot of power out of second baseman right now in the league. I have him going to the Mariners and filling a spot there, taking that great defense out to Seattle, trying to turn things around, and Seattle's a team that you think of like, yeah, they are a contender, I think, to make the playoffs. They were for much of last year. I think same story, different year for the Mariners. They add somebody like Kim, that might help them at least get to the postseason.
The starting pitching shuffle continues for me. Obviously, I have Andrew Heaney leaving the Rangers, so they're going to have to add a guy to the rotation. They're actually missing quite a few free agent pitchers this offseason. Max Scherzer leaving them as well, so I think a guy who might not also cost too much to bring in would be Frankie Montas, a guy who struggled a little bit last year with the Milwaukee Brewers, again with injury, but he has some experience pitching in the AL West, had his best years of his career with the Athletics now, just the Athletics. So Frankie Montas, I believe, lands on a short-term deal with the Texas Rangers.
I have him staying with the Brew Crew, similar to Andrew Heaney. I have him staying right where he's at. If he's able to get his ERA to drop a little bit, his strikeout rate went up as the year went on, so he improved while he was in Milwaukee, and I have him hanging around for a couple more years to see what he can do.
Absolutely. The next two on the list are qualifying offer guys, right? And this kind of puts them in a weird situation. So everything I've read says Nick Pivetta is not taking the qualifying offer, that he wants the longer-term deal. I say he's taking the qualifying offer and he's staying with the Red Sox. I just don't see him getting more than $21 million. I don't know if it's the burned Phillies fan in me or what, but I just can't imagine someone committing $21 million or plus to Nick Pivetta. So the Red Sox have thrown it out there. I think he gets one more season with them, and he's been solid for them. He's better than his time with the Phillies, but he's another one of those analytical darlings that, I think people might value him a little bit higher than what he is.
You look at his numbers from last year, and $21 million, really, for a 4-point-something ERA out of the... Okay, I agree. He's taking the qualifying offer. He's staying in Boston. If he can prove, essentially a prove-it deal, right? You play really well, you'll be rewarded next free agency you'll be up higher on the list. Teams are going to be more inclined to give you more money. I think that's the position that Nick's in right now.
Absolutely. Number 29 on the list, again, same deal. Qualifying offer for Nick Martinez. I don't know what the Reds were really thinking. This is a guy who's kind of swung between the bullpen and the rotation throughout his career. Obviously, to me, if you're committing $21 million to him, you want him to be a starting pitcher for you next year, potentially even your ace on this Red staff. So I don't see him getting a better term deal than that. So I believe that Nick Martinez sticks with the Cincinnati Reds on the qualifying offer.
Ditto. I think that's well said. He stays with the Reds, and outside of Ellie De La Cruz, naming Reds players gets harder and harder and harder. There was a point where I thought, you know what, this could be a legit team, and then you look at their roster, and outside of Ellie De La Cruz, it gets hard. And I think Martinez stays there and tries to help the Cincinnati team along as best he can.
Absolutely. Danny Jansen coming off a pretty bad year, barely hit 200 with the Boston Red Sox. It's tough on the catching market. And catchers nowadays in the MLB, man, the Phillies are real lucky with JT Realmuto to have a guy who can do it all. But if you have a guy who is a career 220 hitter and has a little bit of pop, you're going to get a decent little free agent deal this day and age, and I think Tampa Bay has needed a catcher. They've had the worst catching duo for almost the past couple years, and I think Jansen, is going to get not a ton of money, maybe 2 years, $10 million, and they bring him in to try to supplement their catching depth in Tampa.
I don't think the Cubs are a bad option either for Danny Jansen. Another team that I talked about earlier, a team that you really want to build up, try and make a postseason run, willing to spend the cash. Danny Jansen could be that guy taking over at catcher and moving this team along, trying to get them closer. Rays aren't a bad option either. You talked about, though, that, catcher would be good down there in Tampa Bay.
Absolutely. Jose Quintana, another left-handed option from the New York Mets this year. He's just a veteran who knows how to win. He's gone from playoff team to playoff team, and I kind of think that's what he's going to do again. Those aforementioned Astros that I talked about earlier that I just don't think are ready to shut that window, and I think this is the exact kind of addition a team like that would make. He's not going to cost a ton where you're bringing in, over $100 million to bring in Jose Quintana, but he's a guy who could be real effective for them in the rotation and help fill out their starting pitching staff. So I think that the Houston Astros are a solid fit for Jose Quintana.
This is where I go out on a limb. The White Sox lost a record amount of games last year, and it was the GM or the owner. Somebody came out and said that, this roster you're pretty much going to see again next year. Wait, what? You lost 120-some games and you're going to keep everybody that was on the roster? I think this is an addition for the White Sox. Quintana going out there to see what he can do. He had some bright spots with the Mets. I like the Astro pick because they have some openings, right? And he's ready to go. But the White Sox, you could pretty much plop him anywhere in that lineup, and he'd be a good fit. Yep,
and he has previously pitched for the White Sox as well. Some experience from them in the past, so a little bit of a homecoming there for Quintana. A guy who needs a little bit of a change of scenery, in my opinion, is Michael Conforto, former Mets outfielder, went for the past couple years with the San Francisco Giants and struggled. And it's not a great ballpark for a guy looking for an offensive rebound, and I think that might have been a little bit to do with it. So I think the Los Angeles Angels are a team that have some holes in the outfield that are going to be looking for a left-handed bat. We'll have the opportunity to give Conforto another one of those prove-it type deals, see if he can rebound.
I think the Pirates are in a similar boat. Might spring for him, try and get somebody that can help them in the outfield. The days of Andrew McCutchen's greatness starting to fall away. He hasn't gone yet, but it's time to start looking around for some other guys. I think Conforto could fill in that role at least temporarily. You still have Kutch. He's able to do good things. Conforto, add him to the list, see if he can share the wealth a little bit out there at Pittsburgh.
You talked about going out on a limb. Here's mine. Max Scherzer and Dave Dombrowski have a lot of familiarity from their time together in Detroit. And like you said, Taijuan Walker has not worked out in the 5th starter spot. Andrew Painter maybe is up in the major leagues, but I think that workload is limited, and definitely he will not be seeing postseason action. So, what do? Take a little wild card on a Max Scherzer. A guy that you have some familiarity with. If he is Max Scherzer, you got a potential ace. I don't think that's in there. I think he might have some flashes still in there. Maybe a solid number 3. But hey, if you can get him at a 1 year, $10 million, I think that might be a fit for Philadelphia this year.
I have concerns with Max Scherzer going to the Phillies. I'm worried about his longevity. I don't know if he's going to be able to pitch a full year. You know, coming off of injury issues with the Rangers, I think his body's just at the point where, like, man, I can't do this a whole season. I think he's going to go to the Red Sox. We've talked about the Red Sox looking for some help. I think he might go there, might splash, kind of see what he can do. Hopefully he can get a full season in Boston. If he can't, you should have some other guys that can back him up. But really, really scared about that Scherzer signing potential for the Phillies, and worried it could come back to bite him. That's why I think the Red Sox might be a little bit of a safer option for Max Scherzer.
I didn't say I loved it, Jacob. I just said that's what I think is going to happen. Absolutely. I'm with you there. He has durability issues. He's one of those guys who's probably better off coming back towards the May, June part of the season to try to start his year. AJ Minter been one of the top left-handed relief options for the Atlanta Braves over the past few seasons. Spent obviously his whole career with the Braves, so I just don't think they've let him get away. He has just been a valuable arm for them, and I think in an offseason where they're going to do some tinkering with the roster, maybe let a guy like Max Fried walk, I think this is one guy you want to aim to keep.
That's exactly my note. Do you really want to let him go maybe to another NL East team? No, that's the correct answer. The Braves keep him and keep him under lock and key for these next couple of years, and don't let anybody else in the NL East specifically take advantage of him and try and take them on.
One guy who might be entering the swan song year of his career is one Paul Goldschmidt, and I say this after he came off a tough 36-year-old season with the St. Louis Cardinals, a lot less pop, even his average is down, which is he was always known for a high average, so obviously he's a free agent, and they came out right at the beginning of free agency and said, hey, we're not bringing him back, and obviously not always good for a guy's market, I don't think, when the team who's had him for the past couple of years comes out and says, hey, we're not even going to attempt to re-sign you. So, while I think he's still a serviceable guy, I do think this might end up being his last year of his career. He's going to end up being 37 years old, and a team who likely is going to have an opening at first base is his old team, the Arizona Diamondbacks. And obviously, a couple years ago, they went to the World Series. They're still looking to be a contending squad. So I think, Paul Goldschmidt is still a fit for Arizona. Could make that homecoming, that final season with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, if you're going to let Christian Walker walk, which it looks like they are, why not bring him back one more year and try and send him out with a ring?
Another catcher in need of a new home is going to be Kyle Higashioka from the San Diego Padres last year. Actually had a career-high 17 home runs in part of their catching duo with Luis Capusano. Someone who struggled really, another team behind the plate is the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they've had no plan. They've had Henry Davis was drafted as a catcher, hasn't really been allowed to catch. They had Yasmani Grandal do the majority of their catching last year. Obviously, he's a free agent, and Endy Rodriguez, a prospect that they have, who I believe they want to be their catcher, was injured and out all of last season. So he may come back this year, may make his major league debut, but would be an awesome pairing with a guy like Higashioka. Had his best season of his career last year, and obviously is a veteran presence for that Pittsburgh Pirates team.
I think he builds off of that great year, and he stays right where he's at in San Diego. We'll see what happens, but Pittsburgh's not a bad option, but I think for somebody like him, why not stay in San Diego? The team, in theory, should only get stronger after this year. Why not hang out in San Diego and try and make a deep playoff push?
I have the Dodgers loading up on the pitchers. I think that they are just, going to gonna fight what they had last offseason or last season, which was a ton of injuries. And I think a guy who was another postseason here for them was Walker Buehler, and a guy who has coming back from an injury last season didn't have his best year. So I don't think he's gonna cost a ton. Maybe a 1-year kind of prove it deal where he can come back to the Dodgers, maybe perform real well, and then go parlay that into a bigger deal with them or maybe elsewhere next offseason. But I think it's still a match for a team that's looking to repeat next year.
It's raining pitchers in Los Angeles. We both have it going to the Dodgers. I agree. And I still have one more that I think is going to go to Los Angeles coming up here in a couple picks. I think Buehler's going to stay. He had a good postseason. And why not? Maybe not a long deal like you said, but just something to keep things going and to keep him out there.
And you also have to consider, like, Shohei Ohtani might not be ready to start pitching next season. And Tyler Glasnow has had the injury bug his entire career. So having these options for the Dodgers is going to benefit them down the stretch. And they have the money, unfortunately, for the rest of us. So Kirby Yates had one of the best years of his career at, like, 37 years old last season with the Texas Rangers. Had, like, a 1.17 ERA. Like, just like crazy low numbers, 35 saves. Obviously going to be one of the top relief options out there on the market. Not going to cost, a ton to bring in, but a team that I think will be looking to add a reliever to replace a Clay Holmes would be the New York Yankees. Obviously, this guy is a veteran, so I think has some fit in New York.
I have him going to the Blue Jays here, and adding to that bullpen, trying to keep things together up north. Yankees, not a bad pick, especially if Holmes walks like we kind of think we do. But I have him going to Toronto.
Helping solidify that Toronto bullpen. Michael Soroka, a guy who's just still almost on the comeback trail from injury. He missed a couple seasons after 2020, 2021, and 2022. 23 finally coming back, and then 24. A mixed bag with the White Sox. Some starts, some time in the bullpen. Obviously looking to regain that form in the starting rotation. Was a heavy sinker ball guy at his best, and I think a team looking to add a veteran arm in the rotation would be the Washington Nationals. They're a team looking to take that next step forward with their guys, but also looking for somebody to eat some innings. And I think they might be able to take that lottery pick on Soroka, and it could work out for them on a short-term cheap deal.
I think the Nationals are a good pick. He's the last guy I have going to the Dodgers. I think it's another solid arm that could help them. Yeah, he's had the injury bug, but in LA, who hasn't at this point, right? So just somebody else that you can rely on. You can put him in the pen if you need to, if everybody's healthy to start the year, or enough people are healthy to start the year. And then if people start dropping like flies, all right, you're up. You're ready to go.
The Dodgers had success in bringing some pitchers over from the Chicago White Sox that had struggled previously, like Michael Kopech, Joe Kelly. So this could be another one lining up here for the Dodgers. Andrew Kittredge, just kind of one of those solid middle relief guys over the past 2 years, setup option for the St. Louis Cardinals. I think he moves on. St. Louis is in what appears to be rebuilding mode, and then the Giants are looking to take that step forward. Struggled at the back end of their bullpen with Camilo Doval last year, and maybe even possibly looking to move him. So I think a guy like Kittredge, definitely an option even for them to possibly even close down the stretch, I think, is a solid addition for someone like the Giants.
I have him going to Los Angeles. Angels, not the Dodgers. No more Dodgers. He's going to Anaheim. I think we talked earlier about the Angels trying to turn things around. Somebody else you can put in the bullpen and try and find some magic out of, just to shake things up, try and change the course somehow, some way. It's a good way to do it.
I referenced the Cardinals being in rebuild mode, but that doesn't mean they can let everybody go. They're going to have to, kill some innings in that rotation. And Kyle Gibson is just that innings eater guy that's proven that over the past few seasons. He's already expressed he wants to stay in St. Louis, and when a player wants to stay, that already helps. So I think a short-term deal, maybe like a 1-year deal, just to keep him around, might be a fit for the Cardinals.
I have him packing his bags. He's going to need his passport. He's going to Toronto. Another team that could use a solid arm. We know he has one. Still wish he stuck around with the Phillies for a couple more years, but that's okay. In the end, he's going up to Toronto.
Staying in that AL East, Tommy Canley, solid reliever for the New York Yankees over the past 2 seasons. There's nothing like stealing a player from your division rival, and that's exactly what I have the Baltimore Orioles doing with the New York Yankees there. The Orioles obviously have, like we had spoken about, had some issues at the back of that bullpen last season, to say the least. So I think adding a guy like Tommy Kahnle, more of a setup option, but even a guy maybe in a pinch you need to close could be a solid addition for the Orioles. Again, a team who's more mid-market, not going to break the bank with their addition, so I feel like this is a solid fit for them.
I have him staying in New York and staying with the Yankees. Now, they may run out of money with Juan Soto, and if they're going to try and get Walker, they may run out of cash to try and give him, but nonetheless, I think he stays in New York with the Yankees and runs it back for another year. As you mentioned, more of a setup guy, and that's somebody that they could really keep going ahead to try and make it back deep into the postseason.
Ha-Seong Kim from the San Diego Padres was going to be real high on this list until he suffered a shoulder injury and kind of had a down free agent walk year. So he's a guy out there kind of looking to rebuild his value, but he's shown that he's a strong defensive player. He even has some pop with the bat at times, and a team who could look to make this addition just to improve on their shortstop situation. This isn't any ill will against the Orlando RC or anything from a Phillies fan or anything like that. But I think Ha-Seong Kim could be a solid addition for the Atlanta Braves, even possibly as a super utility guy. But solid defender there, add some pop to the lineup. Could be something that they look for there after RC has struggled a little bit in 2023.
I kind of put him in the same boat as Jurickson Profar, where it's somebody more that you need more than somebody that you want. Yes, he's got the injury that he's got to come back from, but I still think he's somebody really solid, especially defensively, and he's able to hit, maybe not string together a whole bunch of home runs, but sometimes all you need is small ball base hits. And that's something that you can really rely on Kim to do. So I have him staying right where he's at in San Diego.
No, that's absolutely a fit. If he moves on, I don't know exactly who they're putting at short. It could even be a Jackson Merrill move from the outfield. So it'll be an interesting situation there to see. Another guy kind of interesting to watch is Shane Bieber coming off an injury. Obviously missed all of last season, but one of the top starters in baseball previous to that with the Guardians. So I think the Orioles kind of round out their mid-market additions here with another starting pitcher and just really solidify their starting rotation. If he is what he was before injury, that's almost adding a potential ace to the top of that Baltimore staff. So I think that's a move that they go to look to get done.
Now, I think there's some concern. Probably not going to be ready to start the year, right? So it's going to be a little bit until you're able to see him really out in the field. But I think the O's bite the bullet here and decide to take him on, because if he is as good or just close to where he was before the injury, it's a done deal. Like the O's won the signing. So I think Bieber packing his bags and heading to O-Town.
Another veteran pitcher looking for possibly his final stop is Justin Verlander. I really do think he stays with the Astros. And this just kind of continues my theme of I don't think they think they're done. So I think it's, hey, let's just keep him, 1-year deal. Not necessarily going to break the bank, but hey, if you do get Justin Verlander at the top of his game, you got Justin Verlander again. I don't think that's necessarily there. He's another guy who's going to show you some flashes, maybe not make it through the full season, but somebody that I think that they are going to want to keep around in H-Town.
This was another one that I kept seeing Phillies and scratching my head like, why? Why would you want somebody older? They tried the David Robertson experiment. It didn't work out a couple years ago. We don't need to do it again with a starting pitcher. Anyway, I have Verlander going to the Red Sox. We talked earlier about the Red Sox rotation kind of up in the air. Talked about Pivetta. He's probably going to stay. I think, adding Verlander to that group, he's going AL to AL, but it's a strong arm that as long as he can stay healthy, I think the Red Sox will try and reap the rewards from.
What's interesting here is the MLB trade rumor staff had both Scherzer and Verlander going to the Phillies. You have them both going into the Red Sox. So it's just interesting that, there's a slot for these veteran guys that they could fill, even with multiple squads there. Another team that maybe looking to make an international addition that I have would be the San Diego Padres for Tomoyoko Sugano. And he has proven down the stretch down his career that he is a solid veteran arm out of the rotation, and he is obviously looking to make a move to the MLB in his final years of his career. He's advanced age, I believe 35 years old. He's looking to win now, and why not join somebody like Yu Darvish and try to make that pairing against somebody like the Dodgers out there, and really try to compete for a title. And from everything I understand, all of the Japanese players really admire Yu Darvish, and I think that might play into a signing there and a potential add to the top of the rotation. I mentioned obviously the Padres are going to have to make some additions to the starting rotation, so I think there's a little bit of fit there.
I like him going to the Mets here. We talked earlier about, well, they could use some pitchers. They've got pitchers that they're going to be losing with free agency. They're going to have money, I think, still to burn a little bit. Why not go out there, try and get a star? You want somebody that's ready to win now. The Mets are ready to win now. It's been a long time since they've been in a position like this, and I think they're going to do everything they can to try and get stronger, not let the Phillies catch them, not let the Braves catch them, and try and get within striking distance of toppling the Dodger regime in the NL.
You mentioned David Robertson just a couple picks ago, and I mean, here he is right here on the list. He's still rebounding, bouncing around the league, looking to be that closing option for some team. And I think one playoff team that is going to consider him is the Detroit Tigers. Obviously, without that bona fide closing option, maybe not looking to make the top end addition, but a guy like David Robertson is a vet. All of a sudden, you add him back in there, and you're able to kind of slot your relievers in that bullpen a little bit better. Everybody knows their role, maybe able to perform a little bit better for Detroit as well.
I have him going to the Nationals. Nationals may not need a ton of relief help, but I think they do need a little bit. A veteran arm like him could be positive for both him and for the team. We didn't really talk about the Nationals much throughout this whole deal. They obviously do need some pieces, but they certainly looked better last year than they did in 2023, and I think the thought is that they're going to keep improving over time, but still a couple of pieces that they can add. Why not add David Robertson to the bullpen?
Yeah, we talked about the Red Sox adding to the rotation. I believe that they go international again, bring in Agasara Wara from Japan. Now, he's had some experience in the bullpen, in the rotation. I do think, obviously, we're going to bring in this international option. I do think the Red Sox are going to want to try him out in the rotation as well. A left-handed arm, so obviously give them that option. And what I believe right now is an all right-handed staff up there in Boston.
And I agree. I have him going to the Red Sox as well. We'll see what he can do coming over from Japan. But I do like the point that, only righties for the Red Sox at this point. Get somebody else in there. Get a lefty. You're going to want that variety. I like the Red Sox. I agree.
Absolutely. And then the Royals. Again, aforementioned, one of the worst outfields in baseball last year. I already have them making one addition. I think a second one is primed up there for them, especially big spacious outfield like Kauffman Stadium. Why not get Harrison Bader out there to roam around that center field, try to patrol that grass, and obviously not going to add too much with the bat offensively, but a nice solid center field option for them in Kansas City.
I like the Marlins staying in the NL East. Bader trying to find somewhere to go. The Marlins could use somebody. They had that playoff series, the wild card 2 years ago, and then fell flat on their face and really just could not turn it around. Try and make a step in the positive direction. I don't think we talked about the Marlins at all yet. So I think Bader makes his way down to Miami for next year. Absolutely.
Final guy on the list is one of those rebound guys looking for a rebound season, but also a former Philadelphia Philly, Spencer Turnbull. Had a real solid beginning of the year, man. Was one of the top pitchers in baseball. And the injury bug bit again, and that's what he's had his entire career. A team that's real good at these reclamation projects is the Milwaukee Brewers, right? And he's not going to cost a ton to break the bank. They're going to be looking to add at least one piece, I think, to the starting rotation. I think taking a gamble on him just might be worthwhile for the Milwaukee Brewers.
We talked earlier about the Reds. Like, what are they? Or are they completely in rebuild? Are they not in rebuild? I think he goes to the Reds here to try and turn things around. As you mentioned, starter, reliever, he could do different things out in Cincinnati. So I like Turnbull. He's sticking with red as his uniform color, just moving to the Reds and getting away from the Phillies. So we'll see what he can do, and we'll see how right or wrong these picks are come spring training.
All right, and we have come to the end of the top 50 free agent prediction list, and I mean, I enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me, Jacob.
Yeah.
The one thing that is interesting about this exercise is the trades that aren't equated, right? And I think that one of this offseason's themes in the MLB is going to be trades, and it's going to be interesting to see how that might slot different guys in somewhere. But I enjoyed doing this. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for joining us. You can see our full list on fox43.com.